Good evening, everybody. It's 5 p.m. Pacific time, which is where I am, and that can only mean that it's time once again for another episode of The Yard. Welcome to The Yard, everybody. Believe it or not, we were just talking, this is our 12th episode. It seems like only 3 months ago when we started. The Yard... The Yard is a production of our company, Commissary Club. Commissary Club is the first social network for 70 million Americans who have criminal records. My name is Richard Bronson. I am the founder and CEO of Commissary Club. I'm also the founder and CEO of 70 Million Jobs, which is the national employment platform for people with records. I am joined, as always, by my two dear friends and teammates. Number one, we have ex-NBA star Seth Sundberg.
You keep putting more on it.
You're like an all-star Hall of Famer at this point.
We're just kissing cousins.
Seth played for the LA Lakers with a young Kobe Bryant, and Kobe used to talk of Seth as how really he was the key to his success. Basically,
you learned so much from me.
So thanks for joining us, Seth.
Yeah.
And my other dear friend is the rap star and entrepreneur to the stars, the one and only Divine. Hey D, how are you, sir?
Peace, brother.
It's great to have you again. And suffice it to say, the three of us all have records. We've all done time. And you may have come across our other teammate, Adrian Hatter, who's in the background sort of running things. So thank you, Adrian, for your help. Before we get started, just a couple of housekeeping items. For those of you who have been with us, and I already noticed that there are a number of people here who have been with us before. We're going to be bringing out our two guests very shortly. If you happen to have comments or questions as the next hour and a half or so goes by, number one, please feel free to use the chat functionality at the bottom of the screen to share whatever you want or ask whatever you want. We'll try to get to as many of these as we possibly can. And, often what we do about halfway through is if anybody has an interest in actually joining the conversation, please make a note, message Adrian, and, we'll try to accommodate you with that. And that's pretty much the only rules we have. Our goal here, for those of you who are joining us for the first time, is ultimately we want to connect people. That's what we try to do on Commissary Club, particularly the population of folks with records. And the goal is to connect people so they can be available to one another, to help one another, to serve as role models, to hook each other up, to be an inspiration maybe. We very much want to humanize the idea of people who have a record, to show that they're really not all that different than anybody else. And, they may have a record for something they did or something they didn't do, and they still have a record for it. But the one thing that, really brings us all together is that ultimately we're all human beings. So our goal is to humanize, all of us. And we also are very keen on having everybody who's not done time have a better, more accurate, less lurid understanding of what incarcerated life is. It is not daily rioting. It is not racial wars. It is not guards shooting from turrets with high-powered rifles. That stuff is much more rare than the movies and the TV shows would have you believe. What we do before we get started is we engage in a little exercise that's designed to try to help us all connect with these goals as I've set out. So first of all, what I'd ask everybody to do, our guests, our hosts, everybody else, is just please just take a deep breath and let it out slowly, just so you can sort of just cool out and relax for a minute. Next, I would ask everybody, please, to close your eyes. I know it's a silly exercise. I hate those sort of things, but just stay with me here for a few minutes. Close your eyes, let your mind just wander for a moment. And in the wandering, imagine, if you will, that somehow or another your life took a very, very, very weird sort of turn. Maybe you made a mistake. It was a big mistake. And one way or another, now you found yourself incarcerated. You are right now in some old, dilapidated prison in the middle of nowhere. Keep your eyes closed. Imagine that you're sharing a cell. It's about 60 square feet. You know, it's about 6 feet wide by about 10 feet long with someone else. You're sharing it. Somebody who probably snores, somebody who is a complete pig, somebody who hates everybody, including you. And just to add a little bit of spice to your imagination, imagine that you've been hearing this person you've been sharing your cell with. They've been coughing and wheezing and having trouble breathing. That's kind of frightening because you know where that could be leading. You're sleeping within inches of this person, and you're also sleeping within inches of a stainless steel toilet, which also is connected to your sink. So that's where you're living most of your time. Except once a day, there's a reprieve from all of this, all this misery. Once a day, you're not staring at some dingy concrete wall. You're not being stared at by some angry, confrontational, correctional officer who hates his life or her life, his job, and whose only pleasure in life seems to be giving you shit. Once a day, they let you out of your cell or out of your living unit. And once a day, for an hour, maybe two, you're let out onto the yard. Now, yards are typically, I should say, big, dusty, empty, flat fields. And on the yard, you're able to take a walk with yourself if you want. You can just let your thoughts go. Maybe you want to just toss around a football or kick a ball and play a little soccer. Maybe you want to work out. You go to the weight pile, which is what they call the exercise area. But what really you do on the yard, and you've pretty much done it every day, you know, for the last couple of years you've been in prison, and you're probably going to be doing it for the next couple of years that you're in prison. You walk over to a certain designated spot. That's where your friends in prison hang out, on the yard. So you go over there, and there your friends are, and you're going to hang out with them like you would, you know, like you did on the outside. You know, you're going to laugh. You'll gossip a little bit. You'll share news of home. Some of it's happy. Some of it, unfortunately, is sad. Sometimes it's tragic. You get some terrible news. You know, it's okay to laugh on the yard. It's not really okay to cry or to show that sort of weakness. You avoid that. But whatever it is, it's real and it's honest. That's what's happening on the yard. And maybe, just maybe, you can shut your eyes like you all are shutting right now, and you can maybe just make believe for at least a few minutes that despite all that's gone down in your life, all of the disappointment, all of the shame you brought on to yourself or your family, or all of the injustice that you've had to endure, for a few moments, you can believe that, yeah, actually you are a human being. And that's the best that the yard can give you. So welcome to the yard. I want you to meet some of my friends. And for the next 90 minutes or so, I would like you to understand them as human beings and enjoy that. So please, everybody, open your eyes. Thank you so much for joining me. And thanks for taking this trip with me, and welcome to the yard. All right. Tonight, we have a couple of really exceptional people. And I say that every time for the last 12 episodes, but every episode we have exceptional people. That's one thing I have to say about folks who have done time. There are some truly heroic people that you come across. Their names are Chandra Bozelko and Frederick Hutson. Chandra, who I met in New York City a couple of years ago, she is a graduate of Princeton University. She was arrested for identity fraud relating to a credit card and was given get this, a 6-year sentence in a maximum security prison. That's what she got. While in prison, she used her time, I think it's fair to say, well and wisely. She published a book of poetry, and she maintained a diary about her experiences in prison that she was able to publish when she got out. And the publication was called Up the River. You can find it on Amazon, and it won all kinds of awards. She won Webby Awards, and now she is a powerful advocate for criminal justice and just an amazing woman. And I'm really happy you have a chance to meet her. Hey, Chandra, how are you?
Good, thank you, Richard. It's an honor to be here with you all.
Well, I don't know. We'll see how you feel in 90 minutes.
I don't know. We're gonna get into it.
Everybody says that in the beginning.
I know. Yeah. Things are good now. Let's see.
Jury's still out on that one, yeah.
Let's see what we can do at the time here. Now, joining Chandra is an old friend, Frederick Hudson. Hey, Frederick. Frederick served the country in the Air Force, and he got out of the Air Force and he ended up being arrested for shipping 2 tons of marijuana. Did I get that right, Frederick? 2 tons.
Yeah.
That's a lot of pot.
Damn, that's a lot of smoke.
Wasn't for your own use, all of it, was it?
It's personal, officer. It's personal use. What are you talking about? Come on.
That's personal use, baby. I smoke a lot.
For that, Frederick got 51 years of a sentence, which is a bit more than 4 years. Excuse me, 51 months. 51 months, which is a bit more than 4 years. Frederick is one of these guys, and there's lots and lots of them who go through the criminal justice system who are just stone-born entrepreneurs. They have the gene. Doesn't matter where they are, it's going to come out. He couldn't help notice how challenging it was for people in prison and their loved ones on the outside, their friends and family, how hard it was for them to connect and share pictures and electronic communication in general. So when he got out, he launched a company called Pigeonly. And Pigeonly is a success story. It's a tech company that helps people, send pictures and phone calls and other electronic communication between people in prison and their loved ones on the outside. Frederick, like me and my company, 70 Million Jobs, was honored to be accepted into Y Combinator, which is the preeminent early stage investor and tech accelerator program. Hey, Frederick, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
It's our pleasure. All right, so let's get started here. Enough of my talk. Chandra, let me just ask this question and then hopefully I can shut up. You went to one of the world's best known, fanciest, most elite universities, right? What?
I said one of
the Princeton University. But then you ended up in a maximum security prison. That had to be an amazing jolt to your system. So tell me, what was, when you got there in prison, what was the most unsettling thing for you, first of all, that you had to deal with?
So the way I went was, it was kind of by surprise. And you might say, well, how could that be? That when I actually arrived at prison, it was a scheduling problem, a snafu, where I wasn't supposed to be sentenced
I'm
that
not
day.
supposed to be here. I'm not supposed to be here.
What?
No, this is a mistake. This is a mistake. I'm not supposed to.
Truly it was. Like, I
that the
went to
snapper?
work that day, like my keys, I drove myself, my family wasn't there because they knew I was coming home and all of this stuff. And it was December of 2007. So I was actually around Christmas time, and they had expected me, my family, to get some items for a Christmas meal. My niece, who had just been born, she was visiting, and all this stuff. So there was definitely no sense that I was going that day, except for the judge when I appeared in front of him. So this became like kind of a legendary thing in the Connecticut courthouse, because I literally had driven myself. I had my keys on me. I had to ask to be unhandcuffed so that I could take my keys out of my pocket and give them to my lawyer, so she could actually have someone come get the car and bring it. So it really was not supposed to go down that day, especially not that day, not even that way, but definitely not that day. And so I was so enraged that I didn't have like that kind of, preparation time or warning that this might happen on that day, that I was kind of almost blinded by rage. So I don't really remember that much about going in. I mean, I remember it, but I was also so focused on getting to call my attorney and my parents to let them know what happened. So that was really where I was focused. What really struck me as like, this is not what I'm used to, was when I started to see, and I'm always very careful when I say this, because it's, I want to be clear that this is not me insulting anyone or putting them down, but the number of women around me who didn't have teeth. And I was like, how is this possible that so many women don't have teeth? And then when I started to understand how poverty and disenfranchisement from health systems and lack of access to care and just straight up lack of dental care contributed to their lives. Like, if someone wasn't even looking out to see that they had their teeth taken care of, then they sure weren't making sure that they were getting the proper education or getting the support that they needed to get the education they needed, or a whole host of other social supports that they all deserved and didn't get. So when I want to be clear, this is not me saying like, oh, this is something cosmetic. This was me realizing there is something rotten to the core here that is causing these women's teeth to be rotted to the point that they don't have them anymore, and there's no replacement for them. So that was really stunning for me, because it also, what I've written about this is like how much the center of a woman's like beauty, like her appearance, was missing for so many women, and also how it affected how they could communicate, because a lot of them had a hard time talking without any teeth. So how much it handicapped these women, both in how they appeared and how they communicated their needs or what they wanted to say, or just an idea or an opinion, how much like their past and the way that they were not taken care of was affecting the way that they could take care of themselves in the present, in this prison. So that was my first real like punch in the face. Like, this is not something you're used to.
This is not Princeton.
This is not Princeton, but it's also, this isn't just that it's not a pretty place anymore. There's something very wrong with the society that created this situation, not just for me, but for them.
It's amazing, given the high level of dental care available in prison normally, that you would be seeing this.
Well, no, and that's what I looked like as I went on. I was like, when do I get my teeth cleaned, right? Because like I go every 6 months and I'm due soon. And they told me literally, and I don't understand where this number came up with. They said you have to be sentenced to 9 years for us to schedule you for a teeth cleaning. And I said, that's crazy. So if I'm scheduled to 8.5, I can't get it, and so my teeth will fall out. Or me, who's like scheduled, sentenced to far less than that, I still can't get a teeth. Like, it seems like I'm not asking for too much. I'm asking for 1 a year. Like, can I get this? And this was a big thing where I got called in to see the warden. Like I had to like plead my case, and they were pressuring me about like, why do you need this? Why do you want this? And I felt like, how could you not be concerned about this given what is going on in this population?
So when you got over your initial rage and disbelief that you were actually in prison unexpectedly, how long did it take before you said, holy shit, I better sort of get my head together here and, get it wrapped around where I am.
Well, I'm going to say, I'll say that I was still focused on getting out very quickly for probably about 3 years. Like, that's how long it took for it to like really sink in. Like, you're not going home. Like, I was still like trying to like, thinking the next hearing that I have, this will be out, that kind of thing. It took me literally that long, but to realize that I was really in over my head, probably a month, I'm going to say.
Frederick, what freaked you out first, or what surprised you first when you showed up?
I think the first thing, because I had been in the military and I had been in an environment where you have like a dorm room and you're living amongst a bunch of people, so that didn't really surprise me. I think the biggest thing was the confinement. I remember when I was first in USP Atlanta, and at the time it was on 23-hour lockdown, and I just couldn't, there was no way to prepare for that, coming straight off the streets.
Can you explain to everybody, what does 23-hour lockdown mean?
So basically, you're only allowed yourself for 1 hour a day. During that 1 hour, you might choose to use the phone, you might choose to use the shower. You have about 2 or 3 options. You can use that 1 hour, but that's the only hour you get. After that, you're back in the cell, right? So, they let the tiers out at different times. So you're not really mixing and mingling with a lot of people. It's very, very controlled movement. So I think for me, that was a culture shock, because, I from my personality, I'm used to being in control of my environment. I'm used to being in control of everything around me. I'm used to, I was young, making a lot of money and doing whatever I want to do whenever I want to do it. And during that time, I couldn't even control when the lights was turned on and turned off, right? So that was the biggest thing for me, from coming from the streets to that, is that I realized that I really didn't have control of anything. And it's a very scary position to be in when you realize you don't have control, particularly if you're a person that is, used to being in control of your surroundings and used to being a leader and used to, really, really running shit around you. You know what I'm saying? So
yeah,
that was probably the biggest culture shock for me.
Did you not find it, though, at a certain point, sort of relaxing in a way that you had no decisions to make? Like when you get on a plane and there's nothing, you have no say in what happened. I never was able to nap before I went to prison.
No, I will say that not during the county jail process, because county jail, you're still fighting your case. You're still trying to figure out how the hell you're gonna get out of this. You're still trying to see but once you're sentenced and you're like, okay, I gotta go do this time. I think that night was a night that I actually slept really well in a very long time, because you don't even realize how much the stress of looking over your shoulder causes. You don't even notice it because you just live with it.
Yep.
Until you don't have to do it anymore. And then you realize, well, damn, I didn't realize I was even weighed down that much by this until, it's just behind you and you say, okay, now it's just, it's just this next phase.
Right.
Yeah. So Chandra, it sounds like you were sort of surprised. I mean, you were not sort of, you were completely shocked that you were going to prison, but you held out hope that this was just a temporary sort of glitch and that you'd be coming out, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think there were so many things related to my trial and everything else that were so bad, and I was still in that place where like it was still privilege, I guess you could call it, where I was still convinced like they won't allow this to actually happen. Like they won't sentence someone when she actually doesn't know that she's supposed to be going to prison, that she has not warning. And I mean, I knew that there was always a possibility because we had gotten the jury verdict, but I was told by the court and the probation officer who was supposed to interview me for a pre-sentence report and all this stuff, like, oh, you won't be sentenced on that day. And so I believed all of them, and that was the last day I believed anybody else in my life.
Oh no, yes you will.
Yeah. So this is it was like, no, my case is so horrible that someone will come along and fix it. And I started to learn, yeah, my case is horrible, but it's not as horrible as a number of other people's. And also, this is what's happening every single day in
join the club
houses. Yeah. So like no one was really all that offended, or at least not as offended as I was at what had happened to me. And it was that slow dawn of that. And it took 3 years because I mean, I did have a ton of hearings and, sentence review and all these other things where I was going back to court to try to get out or get
Fight the
resentenced.
charge. Yeah, fight,
Yeah.
yeah.
And it, it never worked out the way that I thought that it should. And I mean, I also remember I'm an educated woman who's white in this system. And, there were people who had less privilege than I did. And they had been going through this for years, like decades or been in and out on other bids. And they, already knew that this system was not fair. So I, it was, sometimes I kind of chuckle to myself at how naive I was, but I can see where it came from. With my background, of course, you're going to think that. Of course, you think that somebody's going to come in and fix it. And most people who don't have that privilege knew it's not going to go that easily. Sorry, lady, it's just not.
Was there something that you said 3 years? Was it something that happened, or was it just kind of a revelation going like, I'm here, like stop fighting it, or what was that?
I think it was that I got over half the time, right? It was I was on the back end and I was like,
Right.
if I could do it this
Short
long,
time,
then
yeah.
I'll just do it the rest. And I won't even ask necessarily to get out anymore. If you can do this to me and I can survive, then I sure can survive less than the time that I've already done.
Right.
So I'll write
Right.
it out. And that was more the shift than realizing is just that my own kind of, I would say empowerment. They didn't beat me yet. I'm not happy, but they didn't beat me yet. I'm still alive.
Right.
I
Were
can
you,
get
were you in federal prison or state?
state.
Connecticut. So that's an interesting question. Which is harder to do, the first half of one sentence or the second half? Seth?
As soon as you get to that halfway point, you're short timing, in my opinion. So it's it's all downhill from there. Literally downhill. It's okay, you start thinking about the door a lot more. You go, I'm with you, Chandra. It took me 2.5 years to really stop fighting that I wasn't supposed to be here, or
Yes. Seth was a fighter too.
whatever it was. Yeah, I represented myself in court like an idiot. And,
I didn't do it.
Federal court, Seth.
federal court. Yeah, no big deal.
Difference.
Do you advise others to take a similar path, Seth?
What's the phrase? The person that represents himself has a fool for a client. Yeah, it took me a while. It took 2.5 years to figure that out.
That's so classic. And Seth actually, what he's not sharing with you, probably out of his humility, is the fact that he was thrown into solitary for quite some time. And when he had an opportunity to fight that, he said, no, I'm going to show everybody. I'm just going to stick around here in solitary. I'm not going to give them the satisfaction. So he ended up in solitary twice as long as he had to. I guess you showed them, didn't you?
They don't mess with me no more.
No, but there is a certain logic to that when you're in there, right? So I didn't do that with solitary, but my own sentence, I was like, okay, you didn't get me yet. I'm still alive. They abused me pretty terribly for the first half of my sentence. And then they started to kind of leave me alone. I would say it was probably early 2011 that I've been.
Wait, Chandra, I'm sorry to interrupt, and I apologize if this brings back terrible memories, but who was abusing you as you put
Oh,
it?
staff, not the other women. Staff.
How did they do that?
Oh, first of all, I made the mistake of when they asked me in the initial screen, do you what is your education level? And I didn't, if I had known, I would have said, I have a high school degree, leave me alone. But they said, do you have college? Yes. Where did you go to college? I would never have said, I never ever would have said Princeton. I would have said,
oh man,
some other school, and then they said, do you have college, education after college? And I've almost finished law school and a master's in public health. So I mistakenly told them that. So I had a bullseye on me, right. I'm sure that they were get this one. Because a lot of people do go in and lie and say they have education that they don't. And so I'm sure they said, get a load of this one. She said she went to Princeton, and then they actually started checking it out. I know this because COs told me.
Of course.
I called the school to see if you were lying. And so I'm like, oh my God, the calls that the school must have gotten from these guys. But if I had known how I would be treated over that, not trying to brag, just trying to be straight and give the facts to them, I would have totally lied and said, yeah, I have a few college courses somewhere, something like that. Because it didn't get you anything. They were trying to sort you out to see what your educational needs were and whatever. And it didn't do me.
You had more education than some of the people there, obviously.
Yeah.
Some of them.
The
Yeah.
staff, I mean, the
Guards?
staff. Yeah, then all the staff.
She went to
the staff.
Princeton. She had a master's.
Right, no,
Did
the
you
staff,
not
I mean-
meet a correctional officer who did?
Never.
Hey, now you can be a CO.
I went to CO school.
Yeah, they were little. They probably were just a little jealous of you. You know what I mean? Just a tad bit.
Or well, no, they thought I was like an upstart, right? That I was like showing off, and when I wasn't, like on it, or this is what I tell
Well,
everyone.
you were a
like,
little bit.
No, I wasn't. I was just, they
Oh.
were saying where because I thought they had to verify it.
Richard, she was naive. She was just giving them real answers.
Yeah.
Real answer.
So what was easier for you, D, the first half or the second half of your sentence?
Man, that last 30 days, man, I was sweating, man. I wanted
Me
to go
too.
home. Man. I'm like, yo, the 30 days, man, let's get this done, man. And the 7 days. And like the night
Couple
before.
days and
like,
wake
you know
up.
what I mean?
Frederick, I was scared shitless of being released because I had no idea what I was going to do with myself. I had no job and no place to live and no money. Were you dealing with that, or were you sort of?
No, I mean,
You had a plan.
I didn't really have nothing to go home to. Like I was starting from scratch when I got out, but I was prepared. So I spent my whole bid preparing to be for that day I was going to walk out. So I felt very prepared. It's almost like
Wow.
in my head I had ran through everything that I was going to do over and over and over and over again. So by the time I actually did it in real life, I felt like I had it done already, honestly. And even though I didn't know what I didn't know, and I didn't know how things were going to turn out, I knew what path I was going to go down, and the opportunity just presented itself. And I'm just a firm believer in that. That sometimes you don't have to have it all mapped out, but you just start going on the path, and the road to get
Come
clear.
together.
Yeah.
So were you using your time to put together a business plan or take classes?
I did. So, the cool thing about federal prison is you locked up with a bunch of white collar guys, right? So they
That's
was
where I
giving
was.
you game, and I learned how to, Microsoft Excel worked in there from white collar guys, and even though we would do it on, by hand on paper, like I
That's
learned
wild.
a lot of stuff.
That's wild.
While I was in prison, so it was really an educational time for me, and put financial models together and things like that, business models and business plans, and that's how they was doing their bid. It's how they would get their time passed by teaching others. Now it gave them something to do.
Right. Yo,
So,
I went
we
to
just had a bunch of us that we were just soaking up the game, and I just learned a lot. So that's really how I did my time. I got in shape, started working out because I wasn't really in shape when I went in, and then outside of that was just consuming books and magazines and trying to keep up with the world that was changing outside, and then thinking about what my next move was going to be.
So what would be your advice to somebody, coming in now? Because I'm sure Chandra and you, Frederick, and all of us, we get asked all the time, I know somebody, or my brother is going to be sent away or whatever. What would be your advice? If some young guy is going into prison for the first time, what would you tell them? How to prepare? What should they be thinking about their time?
I would say, if you got to go do time, like the best thing to do is to leave the outside world on the outside. That makes your time a lot more miserable.
What does that mean?
It means that, if you got a girlfriend or if you got a business going out there, you can't run the outside from inside. You just can't do it. As much as you try, it's just not going to work. You're going to be disappointed. Like, you're not going to be able to keep up. People are moving at the speed of light on the outside, and they're not going to be responsive to you the way that you think, and no fault to them, right? Because your life is at a standstill, and everybody else's life is moving just as fast as it was when you're gone. And if you was the breadwinner in a situation, it's even more stressful for them, right? So it's even harder for them to tie those knots and to keep those things going. So I think the first thing and the best thing you can do is to leave the outside on the outside, focus on doing your time, and then really every day that you serve, and you really should be planning for the day that you're going to be out. So whether that means educating yourself with books that you read, you always think about different mentors. Like, I had a lot of mentors in prisons, but a lot of those mentors came in the form of books, people I've never met and probably will never meet. And so, that's what I would recommend someone doing, is whatever lane that you're thinking about doing, or even if you don't know, just like you practicing for sports and you practice for anything else, you just keep doing it repetitively over and over and over again. And by the time you're ready, you'll feel so comfortable, even though you've never done it before, because you've spent so much time going through it in your head that, it'll come together.
That's great advice. Did you have a significant other when you went into prison?
I did, actually. So I was dating a girl and we was together, and I'll say about 6 months into my bid, she got pregnant. Obviously not for me because I was gone, but you know, again, that's part of it. That's part of the issue. Where, like, you just can't control. And you know, people might have good intentions, and they say all the right things, and they want to be together, and they think about this, but it's hard. And you know, unless you're married, you know, I wouldn't recommend trying to maintain a relationship unless you're married. Marriage is a little bit different because you know you supposedly have made that commitment for better or for worse, but I would say for dating and that other, you know, shit like that, you know, you gotta leave that shit behind you.
Let it go.
There was a guy in county jail, and since you were talking about that, that every Saturday night he would scream, and I was in county for a year, but every Saturday night he would scream out, "It's Saturday night. Do you know where your girl's at?" It's like, the whole
fuck him up.
It's real.
Like,
Damn.
Chandra, what would you be telling someone, you know, who found themselves, you know, in a very similar sort of situation? You know, yours was surreal, you know, I dare say, and shocking and unexpected for you. So, you know, would you be someone who was going through the criminal justice system, they had their attorney who was giving them bad advice, now they knew they were coming into prison, what would be the first advice you would give him or her, particularly her?
Well, so I think I was in the state system, which is a lot different than what a lot of people here experience. So it's different. My first advice, if you're going into the state system, is have cash on you, because then it goes right into your account immediately so that you can get what you need immediately. You don't have to worry about setting it up. They're required to credit it to your account, and you don't have to worry about anything else. So that's my thing, is as much cash as you can get your hand on legally, keep it on you if you're gonna go. And the second thing is to just make sure that you talk about half as less as you think you should, even less than like if you think you should just shut your mouth a lot of the time, talk even half of that amount.
Come
Cut it down
on.
by half.
Great advice.
that's good advice. Yeah.
Dee, what would you tell somebody?
Oh man. I think I would tell them, like, from a spiritual perspective, look at it as an opportunity to take a break in life and really figure out, you know, your purpose, you know, what you really want to do in life, your purpose. Because prison for me, that's what it became. It became a way for me to develop myself. You know, like Chandra, like I came from, you know, a negative background, projects, poverty. I sold drugs all my life. That was the way I made my, you know, I figured my life out was by selling drugs and making money that way. But when I went to prison, it became a whole new world where I was like, yo, like, what am I here for? What am I supposed to do? And just really figuring that out. And really, like, self-development and self-improvement was the key for me.
How about you, Seth?
Yeah, similar. I think it's probably just don't resist, you know, whether that's, you know, like guards, whether that's the system, whether that's, you know, your own internal conflict, whatever, just, you know, the sooner you get to the acceptance point, and, you know, the sooner you can actually like start making progress, you know. And I think, you know, that took me a while to learn. So that was something I wish somebody would have told me earlier on.
These are really great pieces of advice from each one of you, I have to say. And really valuable.
Yeah,
well, we have to ask you, Richard. Now you're on the hot seat.
I would say, as I think it's sort of a derivative of what you've all said. I think, you know, and one thing I want to get into in a little bit is, you know, we've touched upon, and it's sort of controversial that we're all involved with activism and, you know, criminal justice reform, but we all, and all of our guests have admitted that going to prison on a certain level was sort of the best thing that ever happened to them in certain respects and what they needed. And yeah, it sucked. It was terrible. It was boring. It was stupid. It was a waste. You know, there's a lot of negative. But for me, who I think I was a complete jerk, I was an entitled, rich, pompous, disrespectful human being before I went to prison. There's something very, very therapeutic about scrubbing urinals for 100 men in prison. And I learned a lesson, you know, about humility. And, you know, that was my spiritual path, D, you know, that I realized my ego, you know, was just getting me in trouble time and again. And part of the ego is showing off your education, Chandra. You know, the things that you used to be proud of, you realize sharing that, you know, isn't helping you any.
He was like, I'm
in
a Wall
this
Street
environment.
wolf.
Yeah. I mean,
know-
I think it's also, I think it's important to know that, like, for whatever reason, everybody here was aware enough and humble enough to start with to know that they needed to refocus whatever energy, like whatever was happening in their life. So I used to think of myself as a relatively aware liberal person. And then I got there and I was like, I can't even imagine some of the shit I must have said to people thinking I was being kind or being progressive before I got here. And I didn't know shit about this, like what really happens in the world. So I'm sure I said things like, well, if you just work a little harder,
Yeah,
and
right.
work out.
That sounds really good.
Now I would be like, who is this woman? Like, shut her up. Like, right? Like, but I
Not
know
very practical.
like that. I know I did because I just didn't know. So it was it oriented me towards what I actually wanted to be, the kind of person I wanted to be, but honestly wouldn't have known how to be it.
Yeah. Did you change the person you were by going to prison, Frederick, you think?
No, I think I actually became the person I actually am by going to prison. I think you know.
But was that different than who you were?
Yeah, absolutely. So in the streets, I had to wear a lot of masks, right? So I had to be somebody that I really truly wasn't just to survive in that life. So and I think prison was a time for me to take all those masks off and just be my most authentic self. Yeah, that's how it played out for me, because you know, when you in that other world, you running the streets and shit, and you dealing with a bunch of wolves. So you dealing with a bunch of wolves every day, you become a wolf too, even if that's not who you really are.
Right.
And that was my situation. So
Right.
yeah.
It's interesting to go to prison to take the mask off.
That's an
Yeah.
amazing
Yeah.
awareness to gain and an amazing revelation, and very honest and very real. This is, I think, exactly what we're trying to achieve here.
The realest and rawest.
And surprising.
Frederick, I got a question for you. So you know, you're a natural entrepreneur, right? You've been an entrepreneur, whether it was 2 tons of marijuana, you know, to Pigeonly and everything, right? Like, did you have a hustle inside?
Interesting enough, I did not. That's a new thing. You know, everyone around me did. You know, my celly, he had a store. He ran a store.
Yeah, the store, the infamous stores, huh?
Some guys,
2 for 1.
guys in the kitchen, where you know they'll sell the onions and the fucking.
That was Seth's job.
Yeah, so some of that, but I actually didn't do any of that. I didn't do any of that.
Did you, Chandra?
Have a
You
hustle?
have a hustle?
To get stuff that I needed? No, I was lucky enough to have family that was supporting me, but I was I had a hustle, like an advocacy hustle, in the sense of like I was always sticking up for some issue or another. So it didn't, you know, my initial lack of popularity didn't.
Yeah, I know they hated that.
Did you write a lot of paper, Chandra?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just to reset the room, as they say in Clubhouse, we're here today. This is the yard. We're out on the yard, kicking it with our friends. I'm joined with Seth and Divine, and my name is Richard Bronson, and we have 2 amazing people who are sharing a lot of wisdom that they gained through their experiences in general. Chandra Bozelko and Frederick Hudson, who have had a great deal of success. So Chandra, you were keeping a diary when you got to prison, right? When did you start making entries into this diary?
I originally started it, like I would say probably a month in, but it wasn't as a diary. It was more like notes in case I need it for later. If I was going to, I wasn't looking to sue, but like if I needed to document something for a legal purpose later, that was the purpose of it.
You always had an angle, didn't you?
I did, right? So there is, right? So I'm starting to fill these notebooks, and then I was like, you know, some really funny stuff was happening. So I was like, I got to write this down.
All right, so that's
I forget it.
That's the next question. What was the funniest thing that happened to you in prison?
I don't know. I mean, like,
Well, who was the funniest person?
Another woman named Mimi Myers.
Mimi Myers.
Yes, her
Mimi
name.
Myers from the
She
first
goes
Tell us
by-
about Mimi.
Mimi's goes by Meme. That's her Mimi, and she said it's my name and my philosophy on life. And
Yeah,
she,
I get it. Mimi.
yeah, she's was she's just really funny. And then, but if you would ever say anything, like you would say, I don't know, something about something about Bridgeport, a city in Connecticut, and she would say, Bridgeport, you're not fucking with them Haitians down there, right? I barely like drive through Bridgeport, but she would like know the whole scene. You could mention any city or any area in Connecticut, and she knew the whole like racial makeup and who was like hustling there and who had what going. Like it was just kind of almost incredible, but also the way her delivery was, she was just very funny. But I remember that. That's my name.
Was she okay with you laughing when she was funny?
Yeah, but she also wasn't like, it didn't go to her head. She kind of knew this was a white woman who wasn't used to hearing that kind of stuff. So she kind of just let it go. She wasn't offended, but she also didn't appreciate, like, she wasn't like, oh, she thinks I'm funny. It was just, that's who she was.
That's what she's used to. What about you, Fred? Who's the funniest person you met in prison, Frederick?
Oh man, there's so many clowns I've met in prison, man.
For real, right?
I can't. I mean, it was just so much comedic relief. Just
It was.
Absolutely.
it's more than what anyone would expect.
Right.
With
Plenty of
Exactly.
material.
the amount of funny shit that you see is because you just around so many characters and they just, particularly when I got towards the end of my bid and I was in the camp, there was this one guy and just like, you meet those person that just anything, they're not even trying to be funny, they're just talking and it's just funny as hell. Like,
Right.
that's how he was. Like he would just, like he would talk like he was like an old Baptist pastor, just for no reason. It was just,
How old was he?
and he was young though. He was my age, so that's what it was. It was just crazy. He was just a crazy guy.
He sound like Arsenio at the
He
motherfucking
was
pulpit.
one of those people, man. Just a big, chubby, funny guy, and just always like he would say the simplest things, and it just sounds like crazy.
Right. That's what people don't understand. You're cooped up together forever.
Yeah, there's a lot of comedy.
Personalities come out. On a less funny note, Chandra, you came to prison, and I don't want to make easy generalities about you or your Connecticut, Princeton upbringing, but you come into prison as a white woman. Were there racial issues that you had to address? Was that a thing where you went? You were in a maximum security. I had to imagine that was going on.
Well, I should note that the prison I was in was a state prison, and Connecticut only has one women's state facility.
Oh, wow.
Danbury is a federal, so there's no county jails in Connecticut. It's one of 6 unified states where we don't have a jail system. So anybody who was there literally for breach of peace up to capital murder is in the same facility, sometimes in the same cell. So there's no differentiation.
Crazy.
So but I have to say this, I give the staff where I was such a hard time then and now, right? Because that's part of my work. I write a column about
advocacy,
criminal justice, and stuff. But I will give them this, an A+ on how they handled race issues. They rarely came up. I used to ask a lot of like my cellmates who were Black or women of color. I would say, like, do you see a lot of this? They say, I'll see a little of it, but if I tell like Officer X or whoever that they'll shut it down immediately. And if you pulled that stuff where you were using epithets or making fun of someone for race or whatever, you were out of there faster than I've never seen the staff move so quick as when they were reacting to someone who was pulling that stuff and using bad language or whatever. You were out, you were in solitary and like that. So I have to, as much as I can't, I have real problems. They have problems with me. That I have to give it to the staff. That any of that stuff started to pop off, they got rid of it really quick. And if one of the staff members did it and someone found out, they were out of there also just as quick, removed from inmate contact. They should have been fired, but still it was something. It wasn't something that anybody on that compound was going to let happen. And I'm not saying that they also weren't racist. They just knew that they shouldn't allow it and it was going to cause problems. But I do have to say, that kind of stuff, if there were ever, well, there were a lot of white women who said, I won't move into this cell with a Black woman. They were out of there and in solitary quicker than you could say, boo.
Quick question. When did you learn that pop off meant a emergency situation was about to go down?
Probably day 2. Not day one.
I
Frederick,
love how you incorporate that into your
was that
language.
something
It's
that
about to
you-
pop off, baby. I love it.
was that something, were racial issues something that you had to address in prison? Were there
Yeah, yeah. So it's the
guys,
thing.
you know, the
So
black guys with the black guys?
yeah, when at least in federal prison, particularly, I started out at a high, went to a medium, from medium to a low, and then from low to a can. And because there was the quantity of the drugs in my case was so high, they automatically classified me as a violent offender, which put my security level up. So one thing about the institutions that I learned quickly is that the guards are really just there, and the inmates run the institution, period, right? And that's just how it is. So particularly when the higher level you are, the inmates run the institution. So the inmates are managing, you know, those types of situations. So you have the shot callers from different groups, the blacks with the blacks, the white with the whites, the Asians with the Asians who rode the black, the Hawaiians rode the black. You have Nathaniels, you have the MS-13, you just have everyone stayed in their groups, and that is what kept the peace, interesting enough. It's because everybody stayed in their group, and when the times that there were issues, the riots that I were in, it was usually because two people from different races got into it. And that's usually what caused the issue. And then it was one of the situations that even though I had nothing to do with it, I'm in a TV room, if a Mexican, Nathaniel got into it with a black guy, you know, that becomes my problem because I'm just a black guy, right? So I got to roll with mine, and that's just how it was. So as I got lower, you know, when we got down to the
It was less of an issue.
you didn't see this anymore, but I mean, it was a thing all the way, even at the low, it was still a thing, right? You had the tables, you know, there was no mixing, and I get it. And, you know, I always tell people prison actually reflects the broader society that we all live in, right? It actually is a more concentrated version of it.
Right.
It really reflects the world that we live in, right? And the only difference I would say is that it's an environment where there's consequences for what you say and do, right? So, you know, here you can flick off somebody if they cut you off in the car, but in there you do something, you better have something to back that flick off with. You better have something to back it up with, right? So that's the only difference between general society and inside. But yeah, for the most part, you know, that's how race relations was managed, is that mostly, you know, for the most part, prison segregated. Like you can mix business, you know, different groups, but if business go bad, it creates a problem, right? So I mean, those things are really important. Actually, those things actually keep
that approach kept the peace.
It keeps the peace for sure.
Interesting. So Chandra, on a completely different subject, but one we always talk about, it's something that everybody can relate to, and that is the subject of food and what you eat. And I'm going to be talking about food. I do my rant where I just sort of yell at whatever is on my mind in a few minutes. But food in prison is not so good, which probably doesn't come as a shock to too many people. And some people just sort of accept it, and they eat shit, you know, and they accept it. And other people are very, very industrious and creative. What did you do as it related to food? What do you remember? Did you have a recipe that you were in charge of? But you certainly knew people who did, right?
I worked in the kitchen. So this was the big thing because I wanted to spend my time writing. They said, you're going to work first shift, which is a 3:30 wake up. You're going to go work first shift. And I said, I really did say this. I said, no, I don't think I'm going to be doing that. I'm writing. So I don't need a job. So thanks, you can give that to someone else. And they were like, the first guy let me go. And then they were like, come back here. There's literally no way you're getting out of this, Bozelko. And I was like, and so everyone gave me all these like tips, like fall down and pretend you hurt your back. You'll get a medical excuse, and do this and do that. No, and I started it, and I was like, let me see what other ways I can work to get out of here. And I really liked it. Like I loved it because I got
wait. Before you talk about how much you loved it, what did you object initially? Was it the fact that you had to wake up for a 3:30 a.m. shift?
That was part of it. But then the other thing was that it was manual labor, and I thought I was above that. Like, don't you understand? I'm the idea person. I help people. I don't make potato salad. I don't do that. And so they were like,
underutilized in this facility.
Yeah.
Right. So like I was, and so, but so I go in there, I could tell that a lot of the staff was laughing. And so I was just like, oh, well, how do I, like, what's the minimum I have to do just to get out of this situation without getting a ticket? Because this is why, if I knew if
Not
they
the
get
dreaded ticket.
Yeah.
they were gonna, I was not gonna be allowed to access the no internet computer where I would type some of my stuff. So I was like, I can't risk that. So I go in and I'm like, I actually like this. I'm getting some exercise. I get salad. I get access to like other stuff. I get better food. I don't have to worry about this. And I was working in food service from 2009 to literally the day before I left in 2014. So that's where I got it. I didn't even have to worry about commissary. I mean, I did order some, but not
So
a lot.
you ate the food in the mess hall in general?
I ate stuff that didn't go to the
Right, she had access. She had access, Richard.
Yeah, she had the
I
best-
worked in the kitchen too. I didn't really have that much access. There was nothing to
No.
access.
But in Connecticut, women,
Good shit.
no,
Yeah,
the
you have unlimited access to inedible, whatever they call it.
Enjoy.
That's where I
The world
was.
is
Enjoy.
yours.
Manja.
we were the central kitchen. We were what they call the distribution kitchen. So Cisco used to send us samples, big
Ah.
Wow.
scallops, all this stuff, because I don't know why they thought we would ever be ordering it. So they would send these samples
Scallops,
back.
did you say?
Yes.
Wow.
Did you write a review? And
That wasn't with Gen Pop though. That was like a
So I
specialty
got
thing.
access
That was
to
for the
all of
staff
that,
kitchen.
Right, exactly.
special chicken, all this stuff. So I had a completely different menu.
Wow.
Wow.
What about you, Frederick? What do you eat?
I eat whatever they gave us, but so I would eat the the 3 meals they would give us a day, and then in the Feds you get the same thing. It's like on a schedule, right? So you know
Right.
what's coming on the day is coming on, right?
Word.
And then
that schedule's great. I wish I ate like that. now
Thursday
on a schedule.
chicken, Friday
I wish
fish.
I had
Yeah.
that 5-week schedule now. Like I knew
Thursday
every
was a
Wednesday
chicken
was going to
day.
be
Yeah.
hamburger day.
Yeah, Tuesday is caviar day.
He's gonna get bird every Thursday for sure. We're
Right,
gonna
the
come
bird
back.
cake every Thursday.
Yeah. But after that, on the Fridays, like, we would have movie nights, and that's something they do, Fed wide, right? They'll do
Yeah, the
movie
movie
nights on
night.
Fridays, and that's when people get creative, right? So that's when the guys will be selling the onions, and they'll get their Doritos and make a spread, and you'll be surprised with how creative somebody can get with a bag of
Nachos,
Doritos,
man.
a soup, and a sausage log. You know what I'm saying? So you can see how
Sausage
creative
log.
people would get.
Sausage log.
It's all in the naming that makes it so
Yeah.
No,
delicious.
for real.
Eight-
It makes
eight
it more
billion
intriguing.
grams
Like,
of
you're like,
sodium.
oh,
All right, so somebody asks, James asks, what was your favorite meal day? Seth, what was your favorite meal day? Because you were in Fed. So was I.
Yeah, there was a, what is it? It's not a hibachi. There was some like some noodle, some like Asian noodle.
Oh, I hated
Ramen.
it. I know what you're talking about. I hated it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I
Asian
like
noodles?
everybody hated it. So I liked it. I like that and the
I
brand
hated it.
cereal.
Yeah.
So everybody was
Asian
eating all the
noodles. I
brand
remember them
cereal
shits.
and all the
What about you,
yogurt
D? What was
soda,
your
yogurt
favorite
soda.
food day?
Friday fish. I had to get my fish on, my fried
Fish.
fish on,
Friday,
always.
okay.
Other than that, it had
Fresh
to be
fish.
Ramadan.
What's
Yeah.
better?
Bean pies. You had access to everything when Ramadan hit.
Yeah. What about you, Chandra? What was your favorite food day?
I think
You were-
I'm gonna go with Fridays too, because we had
What
a
was
really
that,
good
fish?
tuna salad in the for
Oh,
lunch.
yeah,
and
it's
then
fish,
the
tuna
night
salad,
dinner.
fish.
And what about you, Frederick? What was best for you?
It was Thursdays, chicken.
Chicken.
I think you say chicken.
Chicken
Yeah,
pie
chicken.
crust, yeah.
What about you, Richard? Do you have a favorite?
We had what they called pizza day. And it was nothing remotely, I was about to say pizza, and then I'm going to go say Italian, but I should really broaden it by saying there was nothing remotely edible about it, in that they used a non-cheese product that was some polymer of some sort, was the cheese that they would shave, which it would, like, if you could subject it to like an hour of microwave and it wouldn't melt.
Yeah.
So that was the cheese. And they would, I don't know what the tomato, they had these big, like 20-gallon drums of like ketchup, and that was the sauce. And they had some frozen dough from God knows where, and that was the base of the whole thing.
Right.
But you could just make believe that you were having a beer and pizza, on the outside for those few moments. That was my favorite pizza day. Delish. I'm in the feds. I was at a camp, Frederick. So they had every Friday, you were talking about the movie night or whatever that night was. They also had, they set up, believe it or not, this little popcorn maker.
Popcorn.
And it was so much that's
Popcorn
surreal
maker.
about prison. Because there's guns and there's guards and keys and shackles, but there's
And
also
in the
like
corner,
pizza.
there's a
I mean, there's
popcorn
also
maker.
a popcorn maker. You know, because they're
That
trying
was
to make it like it's date night.
That's a hell of a man
Des
cave.
Moines or something.
Guns and shit, and
And there's popcorn.
guns, convicts, and popcorn makers.
Yeah, it was delicious. So let me ask you, Chandra, you finally got out of prison. Number one, have you stayed in touch with anybody that you were in prison with? And number two, what was the weirdest or hardest thing for you to get used to, you know, when you got out?
Yes, I have stayed in touch with people. Thankfully, a lot of them have come home, right? So I can stay in touch with them normally, like free people. But I think for me, I mean, there was a lot. I was scared to death when I first came home too. In fact, like they take an exit picture, right? So I'm like 10 feet from literally freedom. So you'd think I would be excited, and I'm like angry and like just I look worse than when I came in, right? Because I'm so scared as to what is gonna find me when I get out. But is that I used to I think I'm a little agoraphobic now because I'm just not, got used to not being able to just walk outside whenever I could. And what I used to do is I used to stand at doors waiting for somebody to unlock them. And people would say, like, what are you waiting for? Like in the store, like I would just stop at like a glass
Keys
door.
are in your pocket.
Yeah, right. But like even at a store, they'd be like, "Are you okay, ma'am?" And I'd be like, I knew because I was coming up against the glass door that I had to wait for somebody to pop me out. So that was a big thing, and that was like, I would say I went through 6 months of like being like, "Oh yeah, I don't have to. I can just walk wherever I can."
Wow.
I was a little bit scared to go outside. I don't know why. When I first got home, I was just like,
You became institutionalized, it sounds
Yeah.
like.
so that was the biggest thing, is realizing, like, understanding the freedom just to literally go through a door.
What were your prison dreams and when did they end?
They haven't ended.
Yeah, exactly.
They haven't
How
ended.
long has it been for you?
On the 18th of this month will be 7 years.
And you still dream of being in prison?
Yes.
And what is the recurring dream you have?
That I go to sit somewhere in the rec area and someone else is sitting there. So I am like sitting in someone's lap, which could, as you know, cause a lot of different problems for a lot of different reasons. So that's the thing, is that everywhere I go to sit, there's already somebody there.
Wow.
Welcome to your dream, Chandra. Welcome to the yard.
I know, right?
So Frederick, you were ready to hit the ground running when you got out of prison, I gather. Was there any adjustment that you had to deal with?
Yeah, I mean, I experienced the same thing. I remember, just standing at doorways and waiting for someone else to open it before, it's just like a mental thing where you're just
Right.
used to every area being so controlled. And so I remember that. And then also, it took me a while just to figure out, get up to speed with, how phones work, because when I went in, they didn't really have smartphones like that. When I got out, everything was a smartphone. So that took some practice and to get used to that. And it was just really just getting reacclimated with where everything, where everyone was, because even though, I was gone for almost 5 years, and so much change in that period of time.
Changes, yeah, 5 years.
So much change. And just getting up to speed with, and then really I felt like I was starting from scratch in most cases.
Huh.
And that was probably the biggest transition, is just, figuring out, just trying to find your place. And I think I spent the first 2 years really just hunkered down and just working and building my company. I didn't really do anything recreational for those first 2 years. And that's really what my life was.
Paid off.
So it wasn't hard for you for me, it was really hard the first few years to even figure, because I was very successful before. So when I came out, I had no idea who I was or what I should be doing. And I wasted a lot of time and I made stupid mistakes. For you, you had a plan of what you were going to do, and it was clear to you, I gather, right?
Well, for me, so when I got out, how I would spend my time is I would just brainstorm a bunch of different ideas. Something that it was kind of just like a mental exercise for me. And I would just think about any idea from, might be something real estate related, might be something nightlife related, you know, in the case with Pigeonly, it was something that was like communication related. And I just had all these ideas. So then once I was out, I literally just picked one, and I picked the one that I thought would be easiest for me to pull off. That's as much, you know, thought that went into that. Say, what's the easiest thing that I can pull off based off of where I am, based off the resources I have access to, based on what I know. And it was just that it just so happened that the pigeon idea was the one that I felt was most reasonable for me to pull off. And because it's something I understood, it's something I thought was going to be very simple. And then, you know, what I started with was not nowhere near with what we have today. But I started with a very simple comment. I thought I was going to go buy a printer out of Best Buy and then hand print stuff and put it in the mail myself and then just build a business. That's what I was thinking. And you know, it got legs and just took a life of its own, and just, you know, did its own thing. But in the beginning, it really started a very small, humble idea.
That
iteration process.
There's a lot of intelligence behind that approach. A lot of people come out and they want to, you know, do something, you know, that requires enormous resources,
right,
and all kinds of infrastructure and a huge capital outlay that's unrealistic. And then they get discouraged and, you know, go back to slinging drugs on the street.
right.
You know, you took it, let's start small, humble, learn the business, let's see where it goes. And it was just a good idea.
Right.
James and Emily, and James, I think, is a friend of ours who's here frequently. And by the way, I see certain names of people who are great friends who keep joining us. I see you again, Miss Craig. You know, Craig. Craig, how much time did you receive, Craig? Life or something like that? Something ridiculous for being involved in the marijuana business, life sentence. But he was pardoned by the then president, thank God, and he's back with us. But James and Emily had a question. Is there anything that you wish people on the outside, is there anything that they could do for people who are on the inside that could potentially help them, you know, deal with what they're going through? You know, if there are a lot of people out there who really do care and recognize the injustice that exists within our criminal justice system, and they ask, what can we do to help? Chandra, is there something that they can do on the outside to help when you were on the inside?
Yeah, I mean, I doubt there's anyone who goes to prison who doesn't feel like they lose friends for whatever reason. Either old people that you know, people that were in part of your original life who think they know something about you, or think that they, you know, have to stay away from you to protect their own reputation, whatever it is. I think the best thing is to stay in contact, and not even to say like, how's prison or anything else, but just to say, how are you? Like, and just because just like you would if you would to say it to somebody who wasn't ever in prison, because that kind of explains, I still see you as that same person. It's like I would have asked you how you are if I called you or anything else, is to just ask them, you know, what's going on in terms
Acknowledging
of
their agency.
Yeah, and their existence, and not necessarily the conditions that they're living in. That will inevitably enter the conversation, but you don't have to know anything about it. You don't have to couch anything. You can just say, how are you? And that's all it has to be. You don't have to have any other special message or watch your words. Just, how's it going? And that's all.
What do you have any ideas of people on the outside? I guess if you know someone or you love someone, but maybe you don't know anybody and you just care.
I don't think there's anybody though that doesn't know somebody.
Good point. What do you think, Frederick?
I think everyone, I think that is sympathetic to the issue of mass incarceration and just incarceration in America at all in general. I think you have to be more involved in the political process. That's one thing that I overlooked for many years. And what I realized just, you know, over lately, just with my business working more closely with congressional members and just, you know, members of Congress and just people in government and that hold office, I'm seeing it less as this big machine as I saw before, and I'm seeing it more on an individual level, just a bunch of individuals. And I've seen directly the impact of just making a phone call and sending a text and saying, hey, did you know that, you know, the recent PPP loans automatically banned felons who, you know, hadn't been out for 5 years or more?
Exactly.
Like, oh, no, I didn't know that. I was like, what do you mean you didn't know that? You signed off on it. He's like, oh, well, I'm gonna take it back to the house floor and we're gonna vote to remove it. So that was just one text message, right? And it was just because I had met this person. We was not really close. We're not BFFs, and we met this person, and he was the only contact I had. But I had the opportunity to be a voice for people that couldn't be that voice for themselves. So I think we all have the responsibility to, even though you're just an individual, to really hold your elected officials accountable, because most people, they're looking for wins. They're looking for something to hold on to stake their claim on what they're trying to do as far as getting re-elections and things like that. They're looking for things to work on. And
Right.
a lot of times it's not the person that is the elected official. I've gotten more done talking to somebody's chief of staff than I would be talking to the congressman himself.
And
So a lot
I've
of
had the
times we're
same
focusing on the wrong
experience,
people.
and they are accessible.
Very
And-
acceptable. The chief of staff of my Congressman Horsford that did a lot of stuff for us, she literally lives in my building. I bump into her at the bar.
Yeah.
And
Crazy.
that's how I get shit done. So I think we all have access to that. And it doesn't matter what level it is, whether it's your county level, whether it's state level, or the federal level. I think we should get more involved in that process. And that can make meaningful change for people when it comes to probation rules, when it comes to sentencing guidelines, and when it comes to all those things. That's really where you can make a big change and change those policies.
Yeah, and the fallacy is that people think of the criminal justice system as this monolithic, very federal sort
Yeah.
of thing, but in fact, the feds have maybe 9% of the action.
Yep.
91% of criminal justice, prisons, the courts, et cetera,
County.
exists on the state and county level.
100%.
And a lot of it is very provincial and backward and not tech enabled and backward, and and it's run by people who are essentially, imagine if the people at the Department of Motor Vehicles was running criminal justice. Well, you pretty much have it. They're civil servants, Craig, Cecil.
Before we change topics on that, let me add one thing to this part too. So one of the things you guys are talking very like impactful things and all of that, right? One of the things that I never really got, but is prevalent, and everybody that's been down knows it. It takes money to do stuff inside, right? Whether you're on a computer, whether you're making phone calls to your family, whether you're trying to get a sausage log, some fake cheese, whatever. Like there's money that's needed, and so putting money on people's books, is like it doesn't have to be like money. It's just like $20,
Right, it goes a long way. That's a lot of ramen right there.
That's a lot of ramen. I mean, that does a
Squeeze,
lot.
jalapeno cheese squeeze, all
You
that.
know what I mean? I do this thing now. I have some people that are still down, and I'll throw some money on their books. But I pick like, and even I do it with them too, where I make up a name and I put like a crazy name on the money order and shoot it in. So and I don't tell them about it. It just pops up and it's like Schwanzi McIntyre and like something. They're like, who the hell is Schwanzi? Like, I don't know Schwanzi, but that's
He's your lifesaver today.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's 100% right. A little, if you don't have it, $20 come your commissary day is all the money in the world. Craig Cecil, who I was talking about before, who, if anybody knows about this, he does. He mentions that the federal prison system, the BOP, they've been locked down now since March 17th of 2020 for coronavirus. And he said, and again, speaking from a person who knows, letters make all the difference. Just people sharing what they're doing for the day makes all the difference. So send letters to people and just, they don't have to be important.
Yes,
they
don't have to
be, just to say, hey, I know you're there and we're still together, we're still connected. This is great stuff, I have to tell you. I mean, sometimes I feel like we really sort of hit it with our guests, who are open and honest and sharing. And, I really appreciate the fact that both of you have been all of that, and also very funny. As I mentioned, every week, people ask, why do I do this? And one of the reasons is I get angry about stuff at the drop of the hat. Everything pisses me off, quite frankly. So once a week I do my rant where I tell you about what's been pissing me off for the past week. We work in our work, Seth and I and Adrian, we work with literally thousands and hundreds of thousands of folks with records, and we work with the general public. And constantly I get on social media, people saying to me, yeah, whatever you're doing, fine, but why do these people deserve special treatment? Why do people who broke the law, who did something wrong, why are they worthy? In a world of babies who were born with cancer, of all kinds of terrible, terrible things that the world offers people, and all these righteous causes, why do these folks, some of whom have done some awful, awful things in their lives, why do they deserve any kind of special treatment at all? Why should we be helping them get jobs, which is a big part of our work? Other people need jobs. Why are they deserving of your support? Why are you even kind to them? Do they deserve that? And that ostensibly, I guess, is a reasonable question. But let me address that. Never mind the fact that if they don't get a job, the statistics, the data is very, very clear. There's a 75% chance if people who've been arrested and been released don't get a job, they will end up back in prison. And they will end up back in prison, not just once, but typically on average about 4 or 5 times they'll recidivate. And what did they do to get back in prison? They theoretically committed another crime or 4 where there's new victims. But if you get them a job, they almost never get in trouble again. They live happily ever after. So that's I think, a good compelling reason from a societal point of view why it makes sense for someone to try to help these people get jobs. If you let them out and they have no money, I mean, honestly, what the fuck do you think they're going to do? People have to eat. They have to pay the rent. Their kid needs to eat. What are they going to do? Forgetting about the fact that they've done their time. They made a mistake when they were young, maybe. They've done their time. They deserve a chance to move on with their life, right? I mean, we don't execute people who have committed a crime, typically. The New York Times, a couple of days ago, I don't know if you saw it, they ran an opinion piece that was very interesting. It was entitled "The Hidden Punishment of Prison Food," which we were just talking about.
Wow.
And the author referred to a recent study that was conducted by an advocacy organization called Impact Justice. And Impact Justice did the study that discovered, no surprise to anybody here, how truly bad the food is in prison. Food that is high in fat, high in carbs, and very low in protein. Food that's almost never fresh. Food that, as many of our guests in the past have discussed, some of it was never even intended for human consumption. It wasn't meant for people to eat.
You be doing us dirty, man.
People in prison very often come from environments where, they never really had healthy food. Growing up, it just wasn't around. So the author of this article said, well, if prison is meant to rehabilitate, which is certainly one of the purported roles there, shouldn't their job be to release prison who are maybe just a little bit incrementally more healthy when they came in? Wouldn't that be part of rehabilitating them? Now, a lot of people would say to this, once again, prisons are not meant to be fine dining establishments, right? Maybe if inmates gave this a little bit of thought before they committed their crime, they wouldn't be in the situation where they were in. I get that all the time. And it's a hard thing to argue. Yeah, maybe when they were 15 and they did something stupid, they should have thought about that, I guess. But apparently they didn't. So it still brings us back to where we are. Is any treatment justified once a person commits a crime? I mean, does anybody really believe that serving food that was meant to feed farm animals is what people in prison should be fed? Prison is this super spreader environment. It's a petri dish of coronavirus. And you give them non-nutritious food. What what do we expect is going to come of that? People, I think in general, Americans in general, we have the sense of fairness. Punishment should fit the crime, right? That makes sense. That's almost biblical. Someone smoking a joint and caught by a cop shouldn't receive a life sentence. I think we'd all agree. Young kids who were on a joyride with a car, I used to do this, I admit it. They find a car and they go for a ride. Should they spend the rest of their life in solitary confinement? I don't think anybody believes that. By the same token, people shouldn't be fed dog food while they're incarcerated. And I don't care what they've done. That's not what we should be doing to people who we've chosen to lock up. So you tell me I'm wrong with that. I don't think you're gonna. That's my rant. I'm sticking with it. All right.
Good one.
Thank you all for joining us once again. It was a stone gas to have you all here. And Chandra and Frederick, thank you so much for taking time out. You guys are amazing. We have some great guests coming up over the next month or two. We have Shaka Senghor, who is an amazing advocate for criminal justice. Alice Johnson, the grandmother, drug dealer who was pardoned, and she is an incredible woman. We have Ear Hustle's Earlonne Woods. Earlonne Woods had in prison a podcast called Ear Hustle that won the Pulitzer Prize. He's going to be joining us. And what we're planning to do is simulcast a bunch of these episodes in Clubhouse, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with what that's all about. So that's going to expand our reach dramatically. We have launched a crowdfunding campaign on Republic. It can be found at republic.co/commissary.club. And if you dig what we're doing and what we're trying to do, creating communities for people with a record, helping them getting a job at the same time, generating great investment returns. We are all about double bottom line, do massive social good and make a lot of money doing it. That's a new paradigm that we believe in. Please check out our crowdfund on Republic. And needless to say, tell your friends about the yard. We're humbled, truly, to have the opportunity to serve the folks that we do, people with records. The world, needs heroes, and you find heroes in the strangest of places, and that indeed is what we have. We've all made mistakes. God knows I have, that's for sure. And we've all had to ask for second chances. If we all try to help one another, particularly those of us who have gone through the system, and look after each other, we can do something very, very special, and we can change the world by doing it. So please let people know what we're up to, and please stay out of trouble and stay safe. Thank you all for joining us. If you'd like to stick around here, we keep the room open till 2 a.m. Sometimes people like to just connect with one another. We think that's wonderful, but we thank you all for coming. We'll see you next week. Good night, everybody.